7 o'clock, and I'm going to call the meeting of the Development Review Board of December 20th, 2023 to order. I forgot what I'm supposed to do all of a sudden. I have to read the chair's opening remarks. So, sorry, I always feel bad for the rest of the board. At the DRB, we hear applications for land development in the town of Brattleboro and appeals of zoning administrator decisions. Procedurally, the Development Review Board operates on the record. Broadly, this means we take a clear record of testimony from the applicant and any interested parties, and then issue a written decision with our findings. Applicants and members of the public should be aware that as we are on the record, this is your opportunity to comment on and provide evidence relating to an application. Application materials and written testimony are posted to the town website as received. Hearings may be continued at the board's discretion if materially important documents are received after the submission deadline. In the event our decision is appealed to the environmental court, the court will not take or consider additional testimony at its hearing, but will look at the evidence from our hearing, the regulations, and determine if the evidence supports the findings and decisions of this board. Only interested persons that participate in this proceeding may appeal a decision made by the board, so I strongly encourage all of you to speak up at this hearing. Do they have to take the oath even though it's a sketch plan?
I don't know. I guess it wouldn't be testimony for the sake of a decision, so maybe not, but
Yeah,
couldn't
for just in case. This is a sketch plan review and we're not gonna vote. We're just gonna give you our advice, but just to be on the safe side, and since Brian has disappeared and can't give us an answer.
There it is.
Brian, if this is just a sketch plan review, do they have to swear in?
No.
Okay. So I'm not going to administer the oath to anybody. Okay, and you don't require a majority of votes. And we have 4, 5, 6 people,
Dan joined.
and Dan, 7.
6.
1,
Allison.
3, 4, 5, Allison,
Yeah.
and Dan.
Oh, Dan's here too?
Yeah.
Ah.
Okay. So it should be noted that the town of Brattleboro is a party with an interest in land development applications. The town does not have a special status before this board. Documents provided to the board by the town planning department, town attorney, or other town departments will be considered in exactly the same way as information from the applicant and all other interested parties. So we do have to approve the minutes and the minutes are the minutes of
November 15th.
November 15th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of November 15th?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of November 15th.
Is there a second?
A second.
Got that?
Yep.
Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
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 I'm abstaining.
And
I'll abstain as well.
so there are 2 abstentions and 1,
Aye.
2, 3, 4, 5 ayes. Was the meeting properly warned?
Yes, it was.
Does anybody have any conflict of interest or has had any ex parte communications? No? Okay. Hearing none. We're going to look at case 2023-146, which is MWF Industries. It's in a rural residential district. And this is a sketch plan review for the construction of 6 cottages and a 3,600 square foot garage office building at 680 West River Road. And since it's a sketch plan review, we will not be voting, but we will tell the applicant what we think of the plan and how it meets or doesn't meet regulations, so that hopefully they will go back and fix or improve things. So, who is presenting?
Over here? I think so.
Do you want to, there's an easel over there.
Okay, that's where I was, I know it's
I don't know how to work it. No.
There are a bunch
Those
of,
are screens.
We could probably use that stool then, perhaps, just prop it up.
They look like screens. No.
oh. Isn't that gold one?
Here, it's just us.
You can do these.
I'll give you the easel. Is that okay with you?
Yeah,
If I do this?
Can everybody see it okay?
There used to be an easel over there.
Thank you for asking. I have no idea how this works, but do you have any more printed copies? Because I cannot see that at all.
Actually,
We're off screen.
if I work with these, I could give you the ones that I was going to work from here, and if you can.
Oh, no.
Is that what you submitted?
Yeah.
You can probably put it up on the screen.
Yeah, let's see how that might work. If you can see it on the screen, that might. Steve, I think we'd start off with the overall.
Share one.
Or no,
Yeah.
start off with the satellite imagery.
You here.
This one?
Yes. Can you see that okay, Lisa?
Yes, thank you.
Because that's not it, I don't think that's that material.
The front and the back. Yeah.
This
So
is,
can you give us an overview of the
Yes.
project first?
Mhm. Sure.
What you want to do? And
Just sit over there so that Emma can get you.
My name's Monroe Whitaker, and with me we have Robin Sweetapple and Phil Savoy, representing the applicant. This is probably much clearer. Nobody minds. As Maya mentioned, this is merely a sketch plan review. We're not asking for any form of approval. It's mostly to get input in terms of how we should proceed from this point forward. We've received a memo from Planning Services with their comments, which I believe, does everybody, at least on the commission, have a copy of that?
Yeah.
And I don't know if,
We have not seen it.
okay, it was online, I believe, was it not?
Yes.
Dave, you could find a copy of the memo online.
That's why I'll go and print out a couple of copies and bring them right back for you. But you guys should proceed.
Okay.
A quick overview, this is the former DMI gravel pit on Route 30, located, I would imagine about a mile north of the Brattleboro Professional Center, Fire Arts. It's on the west and south side of the street opposite the West River. It is visible if I imagine most people here have driven by it and noticed it. Now, it's fairly well buffered, but you can see into the pit itself as you pass by it. The quarry sits on about roughly 8 acres of land. As I planimetered, I came up with 8.2 acres for whatever that's worth. It appears to be a little in excess of 8 acres. That's what we're looking at on the screen there. That's Route 30 on the upper side, where north is straight up. You see a dark line running through the center there. That is a power line easement. The green is actually, I imagine, the shadow of the trees that we're looking at within the clearing limit itself. The main focus of the project is to use the former quarry site as, well, really it's an extension and an expansion of that use. It will be used for the stockpiling of soils now, although the quarry has basically, it is finished. There is no more material that will be taken from the quarry. The site will still be used for stockpiling of soil and aggregate. And in particular, there will be a metal building, Robin,
Yeah,
of how many square feet?
3,600.
3,600 square feet. That'll be constructed as a workshop, a treatment center, and offices for the applicant. There will be on-site treatment of contaminated soils here. The building is designed so that one wing of the building, the soils will be placed in the building and treated there. The remainder of the site will be used for parking, circulation, material storage, including equipment, excavation equipment, construction equipment, similar to what it's been used for the last 15 years. In addition to the, what I'm going to call the commercial component here, we're also looking at providing a small residential component on the lower right side of the screen. Basically below the power easement, that area up in there. Actually, it's the area abutting the farmland. And that is what we've been looking at for residential potential. The initial plan that we submitted shows, a rough site plan of what we intend to do for the lower portion of the site, and a sketch plan showing our initial thoughts on what we would do also residentially. The let's see, as I sort of got to my notes here, things that I wanted to point out was we can see the location of the quarry, see the power line easement. Those are the two most notable features on the site. Access is from Route 30. There's a fairly wide, 24 foot wide gravel access road serving the site now. One thing that we'll be getting into a little later is the Route 30 right-of-way. You can see there's quite a bit of land between the center line of Route 30 and the property line along that frontage, particularly in the area of the quarry. In fact, it measures out to be about 150 feet from the center line to the property line, which is roughly 100 feet more than you would generally find on a road of that width. So that has sort of pushed the property line back in to the 8 acres quite a bit to where, but the plus side is that there's a very nice existing buffer, visual buffer of mature vegetation between Route 30 and the commercial industrial site there. Are there any, does anybody have any particular questions about the site itself?
I have a question about the business, if it's appropriate now. So this company that you're building for is going to truck in contaminated soil from other places
That's correct.
and remediate it and fill in the gravel pit?
No,
No,
it will not remain on site,
okay.
except for treatment while it airs out. It will be reused elsewhere once it's clean enough to be used, but it will be stockpiled on site.
Okay, in the interim.
Yes.
Okay.
Both contaminated and treated?
Phil, you have a better insight as to,
Most of the stuff brought in the contaminated soil can only be stored there for 10 days. It's treated, it's aerated in the building, and it's, any floor drain system catches any effluent from it, and then it's trucked out to a accepting facility like a landfill or such and such. So it's not used for anything there or kept there on a permanent basis.
So, no, you can't, not yet. The 150 feet, that buffer, is that state land? Who owns
yes,
that?
it is.
It's
And
state.
actually, the buffer itself is only about 100 feet.
100 feet.
The 50 feet from the center line, that's from the center line down to the pavement, and then the land that's cleared, the slopes on the side.
Okay.
So the buffer itself, the existing vegetative buffer on the state land amounts to about 100 feet.
Okay.
I have a question about the building. Just going back to the building really quick, I think I heard 36,000 square
No,
feet.
3,600.
3,600.
Okay. How much of that is used for the remediation? Versus-
40 feet long by about 14 feet wide.
Okay.
It's just like a concrete bunker with a roof, shed roof over it,
Oh.
and a garage door. And it has a lip on it, but you're supposed to be able to dump into it, and then it collects the water as fill is.
Okay. But is there a portion that's also an office?
Yeah, there's a, actually, Monroe might want to speak to this, but we changed the configuration of it so that the office was sort of the first thing that you would see. So you don't see the garage doors, you actually just see the smaller office area. And he has an environmental engineer that's whose office it is and his, so the MWF Industries.
Tim, is your question, what components are present in the building? Is that, because there's also a workshop and storage, material storage and equipment storage area as well. So the building's basically, as best I remember, comprised of 3 components, is it not, Robin?
Yes, so office area here, the main garage, and then the soil treatment area is on this end.
Okay. So she's pointing to the office area that sort of
Sorry.
faces the driveway. And
Yeah,
the rest
so
sort
office
of-
is here, garage, and then the little treatment area for the soils.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I
Members?
Yeah, so, I think I saw in the notes that part of the area where the cottages were envisioned is in the flood overlay district? Is that
No.
right? No? No?
I don't think it's any overlay, right?
Oh, okay. Sorry.
That's up pretty high. Up a slope.
Okay,
Oh.
I misread that, sorry.
By the way, the way I thought we might approach this is give an overview of the site first, and then talk about in general the 2 areas which we've been doing and how they work together, look at the overall scheme. Then we would focus in on the residential component and then look at the commercial industrial component that will ultimately require a site plan review.
So
Okay.
you want, can you put that one up? This one? With the one that has the blue thing in the corner?
I think maybe the overall development scheme now, Steve, the one that,
Not the slope analysis.
Yeah, he's
no,
getting
the
it.
one that was submitted as part of the package and shows
This one?
the entire site, yes, the one that Robin has up here.
He's getting it. Yeah, it does say that.
Yes, that one. Okay, you can see the darker lines on the left side. That represents the steep slopes of the quarry. The power line running down through the center. And then you can see units that have been placed in the upper part of the site on the lower right. That was our temporary, or our initial thought in terms of how we might place the units. We have an area also set aside for leach fields, which we will see when we get more into that particular site. Both portions will be served by on-site water and sewer. Municipal sewer does not, or municipal utilities do not run that far out, Route 30. So the building is 3,600 square feet, and initially we proposed 6 units there. The 6 units that we came up with, that density was based on the septic capacity of the soils on the site. Figuring that we have the capacity to put units up there, so with the need for housing here, we would look at that potential. We know that we can meet that particular requirement to get 6 small units up there. Do you know what that translates to bedroom-wise, Phil?
9.
9.
9 bedrooms.
The state
That-
equates
for the
septic
state.
system design according to bedrooms, not bathrooms or kitchens. It's how many bedrooms, you know. So
And
we
we'll
can-
get into that in a minute, but based on the memo that we received from the town, we realized that the number of units is going to have to be reduced, but we may have larger units now. So we can take full advantage of the soils as far as the number of bedrooms. But, oh, and the other thing, this might show up better on the next exhibit, but there is an existing maintenance road that the power company has used to access the easement up there, the towers and the land for the power easement. We intend to use that for access to the upper portion of the site. And now if we could move on to the slope analysis, which we'll just touch on here. It will relate to what we can do on the site and how we can develop it and what portions need to remain untouched. Let me see which one you got, Rob.
Slope analysis site?
Yeah, that would be the one. Mhm. And this one, we don't need to look at very closely right now, but what it is comprised of is areas of steep slope within the town have certain restrictions and limitations on clearance and disturbance. And this is the map that we intend to use for to determine our limitations there. Basically, it shows areas of slopes of less than 15%, and slopes of greater than 30%, which we're going to focus on in a minute. And then there's also the range in between. We have 15 to 20, 20 to 25, and 25 to 30, all of which have different thresholds for developments and limitations. So this is going to guide where we place the units and the amount of disturbance we have in any particular area. And that's all I think I need to say about this particular map right now. The next map that we'll look at is, we'll focus in on the areas of slopes greater than 30% and those of less than 15%.
Duplex.
What you're looking at in red there are the areas of slopes in excess of 30%. Those areas will be avoided in their entirety. We will not be doing any disturbance or clearing on any of the slopes in excess of 30%. Those that are shown in yellow are the flatter portion of the sites, where the slopes are less than 15%. And there we sort of have free reign, I guess I would say, in terms of the placement of units and clearing and disturbance. So obviously that's where we will tend to focus most of the residential development. Oh, the other thing I should mention on this slide here, the upper left. It became clear to us after seeing the Planning Services memo that the only way that this property can be developed with both the residential and commercial use is for it to be subdivided into two separate parcels. So if you look at basically what amounts to the white area in the upper left, that is the area that we intend to create for the commercial industrial part of the property. It will amount to about 1.6 acres is what I would expect you would see. The minimum lot size requirement is 1.5 acres. To really get everything in there we felt was necessary for that particular use, it ended up being closer to 1.6 acres. And that leaves us roughly 6.6 acres to be put towards residential development. And that area will be used as a basis for the density calculation, which is basically 1 unit for every 1.5 acres. So that translates to 4 units. Now, as mentioned in the town memo, the units can have, by statute now, they can be either duplexes or have ADUs attached to them. And here the main limitation is the number of bedrooms that we can have. Duplexes are out of the question here. We mentioned that to the applicant, and he said that he's not at all interested in duplexes. He might be interested in the opportunity to add several ADUs to one or more of the housing units. Once again, the main key here will be based on the 9-bedroom limitation of the soils that we have. So if you want to look at this conceptually, what you might do is just look at the 2 units that are furthest out and just cross them off, because those we will not have 6 units any longer based on the comments that we've already received from the planning department.
Farthest out, meaning, sorry,
Which ones are you?
to
Oh,
the
yes.
east?
the
On
west.
this plan, you can see the one that would be the furthest in this direction, it's up here in this crook of the red.
Yeah,
Okay.
me too.
And then the one furthest to the south and the east.
Yep.
Okay.
What we're going to do,
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah, no, the,
Oh, okay.
our plan now is to focus all 4 of the units down in the area of the slopes of 15% and near the power line easement itself. And do one centralized parking area there. And I'll get to the reason for that in a minute. But anyway, what was 6 units here now, we're really, after talking it over, decided that 4 is all that the town feels that can be allowed here, so that's the direction in which we're going to head.
Anybody on the board have any questions?
not that.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
I have one question,
yes.
having to do with the classification or type of soil that's actually kind of be coming in there. Is that something that, what is it we're remediating?
Well,
Urban soils.
Can you,
Most of it.
if you're gonna speak, can you either stand or come over?
I'm still thinking. Contaminated soil, usually from I'll Phil Savoy, an engineer on the project, not an environmental engineer. What I understand from the environmental engineers is that it could be from a gas station tank, underground tank leakage, heating oil tank leak. Basically, that's the majority of it. The soil, when it's taken off the contaminated site, it has to be, when it's dug up from the contaminated site and tested, found it's contaminated, it has to be taken off the site. And it goes to a temporary site, which is what this is. There won't be much treatment there, because it can't stay there more than 10 days. So it has to come off that site, and then it's arranged, it's stored here until it can be arranged and taken to a licensed disposal facility. So, yes, it's treatment in a sense, but it's really,
So you do, like, it's like an initial treatment, or?
yes, yes. I mean, 90% of these contaminations are treated with aeration. You know, so just moving them and letting them sit usually cleans them up. And so it's part of the process.
Now, would these be coming from like brownfields or things like that, or?
I don't know. I believe so. I'm
I mean,
not,
for instance, you know, down in the town, where near the train tracks down there where they're putting in the new train station, that area that was all capped over, that was a brownfield, I thought.
Well, now capped, but,
Yeah,
yeah, but something like that in the earlier stages, you mean?
yeah.
some
Or like
site,
the contaminated soil from buried oil tanks, like that sort of thing? Like residential and commercial buried oil tanks that leaked?
yes.
Okay,
Brian, do you have a?
yeah.
Okay, so this is a heavy industrial use you're proposing, which is not allowed in the district. That's, I think, the crux of the issue with that.
So, temporary storage of material is heavy industrial.
Processing contaminated soils is a heavy industrial use.
All right.
What do you have?
Thoughts about that?
Yeah, I don't know how to respond to that. I was under the impression that actually we would be looking at it primarily just sort of the storage of, temporary storage of
It's 2-36.
soils
Urban
and
soils.
aggregate that would mirror the past use of the site.
Past use did not process contaminated
No.
soils.
Well, not being proposed as a licensed receiving facility or disposal facility. It's a temporary holding facility.
It's a processing plant.
Yeah. It can't stay on the site for more than 10 days.
Industrial uses aren't allowed in that district.
But you could have, would it come under extracting?
That's
That
like,
means
that's like a gravel pit.
That's like.
That's the connection that we were intending to make, yes.
Because I don't know, what does extracting mean, Michael?
Well, I assume extracting would be more like what was there initially, would be like a gravel pit or a quarry or
And where-
something
where you're
where
actually
you're taking
digging.
material out.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you? Isn't
Yeah,
that-
and we have industrial use districts for uses that have impacts that are incompatible with other residential or other less intense uses. You know, this is an area of farmland. I mean, we're talking about treating petroleum contaminated soils by evaporating all the volatiles. Who's the regulator for that? You guys need an air pollution control, or what about the wastewater? Is there a special regulation on that?
Any liquid waste is captured into a holding tank to a floor drain system.
And it's
And it-
finished
it's
from
all-
site, right?
Yeah, it's all controlled by the Vermont A&R, the waste department. There's a,
So you'd have to get a permit.
oh yeah,
Mhm. It's a 10-day transfer permit from the state. I mean, sometimes with urban soils, when they uproot them, they just leave them there on the site. That happened in Springfield, Vermont recently. They left it right in the open road. And then they hauled it away eventually, when it had been open for long enough. That was right there on the street.
Urban soils aren't the same as petroleum contaminated soils.
No, urban soils are not the same. I did say urban soils, though.
And one of the things that we would look at with any use is compatibility with adjacent uses. You're talking about treating contaminated soils next to a bunch of organic farms. You know,
Next to the river.
and next to the river. That's just ridiculous.
And although considerably downhill and removed, I don't think there's any chance of,
I mean, they're aerating it to remove the volatiles. Where do those go? Are you gonna burn off all the exhaust, or is it gonna be a negative pressure building, or is it just gonna vent?
just vented.
Vent it.
Mhm.
So it'll blow onto the organic farmland, given a particular wind direction. And up onto the residences you're proposing above it.
I don't know if it's to really be able to respond. We really need an engineer that specializes in just.
Environmental engineer,
Yeah,
yeah.
but, yeah, that initially, so that would be your opinion then Brian, that's how you see this as being a heavy industrial use. So, and not allowed, okay, so we would have to ask, present a case then. We would still be left with the opportunity to present a case in terms of why it might not be.
Sure. board hasn't made a determination saying they agree with me.
Yeah.
And, you know, they might direct you to come back if you flesh this out with an environmental engineer who can speak to these issues. But they might give you other directives as well.
And that was well documented in the memo that you prepared. And it does say that this district, the purpose of this district is to provide opportunities for housing. So I think that Brian is saying is kind of in line with the general intention of this district. And so there are these limited conditional uses.
So just a question on the water. So you're gonna be drilling wells here?
Yes.
How many wells are there, Bill?
There'll be one for the residential area and one for the shop down below. Well, the one for the shop down below, obviously. The residential one is up by the houses.
But if you were to subdivide these parcels anyway, then we would obviously be looking at them separately.
I'm just thinking about contaminated soil and wells.
Can they what?
Contaminated soil and wells.
What's currently done in this area with soils that need remediation?
Well, the owner, developer says that it's actually not treated. It's stored there for a maximum of 10 days before it's shipped there. It's obviously gonna get some treatment from aeration, but he's not claiming it as a treatment. They're not claiming any treatment. And then
So-
it's all
So
controlled
it's
by
currently
the,
happening?
excuse me?
So it's currently going on?
Oh, no,
No.
I haven't done anything, no.
Oh, okay.
No, there's nothing there.
So is it stored under a roof or out in
Yes.
the open?
Yeah.
Under roof.
Just keep
Yeah.
rain off it.
A concrete thing. Enclosed. It has a door.
But it's vented?
He says it's not being treated. They're not treating it. They're storing it there. The building, I'm sure, will have a ventilation system, but it's not there to be with the intention of being treated. That was my mistake. I'm a mechanical engineer. I'm not an environmental engineer, and I wasn't up to speed on that version of it. It can be brought there and then has to be gone in 10 days.
And more broad.
Well, but you mentioned something about a drain in the storage area that would go into a tank.
Well, we would have a floor drain system in the building anyway, but this would be in the storage area also. And it would go to a sealed tank, like we do with, like, we've done them at some fire stations and some commercial buildings where, you know, they like to wash trucks, but they can't put it in the sewer system or something. You have to store it and have it pumped. So you have to set up a contract with a pumping company.
Dan, do you or Allison have any questions, comments?
I don't have any questions.
Dan?
Well, I had a question earlier about the potential placement of a septic system when we had the map up there earlier. I suppose that's not something we need to discuss right now. But in Steve's memo, plan review memo, I don't know if this applies or not, but the list of commercial conditional uses includes a shop or store, no drive-through, up to 2,000 square feet. Is that what we're following? That's more of a question for Steve, perhaps, or for Brian.
That's a retail use.
Retail.
Shop or store, correct, yeah, okay. So is there any space limitation for a commercial use like this, or is it relative to the size of the lot, or? anything like that?
No, industrial uses just aren't allowed, period.
Okay, right, I see.
I would
In the-
propose, go ahead, Dan.
Well, in the list, I just wanted to, I suppose I'd put it to the applicants. The only likely on that list that Steve included in the memo, it seems the only likely application might be the what is it? The fifth one on the list there, lawn, garden, or farm supply sales. I don't know if how the business runs doesn't really matter to us, but are you essentially storing the soil and then selling it back to someone? Is that kind of how it works? Or are you is it owned by someone and then they're storing it? You're basically charging a fee to store it there.
That's correct.
You're not purchasing it and then selling it back.
Right, it's just a fee to store it there, till the licensed disposal facility is ready to take it.
Okay. So so it really is a processing facility, not some sort of temporary storage where you're either paying for or being paid to store it. Is that correct?
Well, I guess you'd be being paid to store it for up to 10 days. He's not buying it.
Well, I'm assuming that you're being kind of like the middleman, where you're getting paid to take this soil away from a site.
That's right.
College.
Exactly.
And then you're figuring out where it ends up at the end of the day.
Right.
So you're basically you're being paid to take somebody's problem away.
Yes. When you start excavating a site, you don't know how much you have to start with until you get into it, too. So they need a place to put it till they can get it to a licensed disposal facility.
Well, I would like to propose, well, first, does anybody in the public have any comments? The understanding that we're not approving anything, we're not going to make any decisions tonight.
That's what a sketch review is.
Yes. Yes, can you come,
Yes.
stand
Tell
there,
me what to do.
say who you are, and
Hi, Lisa Holderness. I have a Master's of Science in Environmental Science, and I'm one of the organic farmers that abuts this property. And I originally got a very fuzzy, sketchy mailing about the plan. It doesn't show on this, but it is based on the idea that a well would overlap my area, so it would stop me from being able to use part of my land by where they chose to place it on that whole 8 acres of land. I actually don't think that's the biggest problem. That's like one small thing, and I have other area. But when I started looking at it closer and I started to understand what's being proposed, I have many questions. But first thing is just, could we show that original, like the green overhead of the area? Because there's one thing that probably people who don't live there or haven't walked it yet don't know, and I think it really needs to be considered in the entire scheme of the planning and any advice that's given to them. Is it possible to get the overhead green map up on the, how do you do that? I can't really tell you what I want to show you because I didn't
Wanna
bring
use
pictures.
this?
I can try.
There,
He's
there.
got it.
It's up on the
Oh,
screen.
sorry.
Can I walk over there?
Sure.
Okay, so there's something,
Make sure the people online can see it.
yeah, I was gonna say, where to
Didn't like you
go?
at all.
There's something that has totally not come clearly to me, like if I didn't live there, I was.
Where is your property?
Oh, I am here, 38 acres, Brook Meadow Farm. This same power line crosses my property. This is that very steep hill that drops down to that little U that the town and the highway sometimes uses when they're doing work. And this, you can't see here at all, is a very steep, super steep eroding hill. And so that's one thing. What it is a steep hill down to a brook. So this area where it's being proposed that there be contaminated waste, high-level volatile organic compounds brought in, not like dealt with because they're already there, but actually intentionally choosing to place that here, doesn't seem like a good strategy to me. And the biggest reason is you're bringing in huge risk right up against this brook that is a tributary to the West River. And we work really hard. Like I just put in, cost me $15,000 to put in another well, so I'm not letting cows walk in that brook. 6, 7, 12 at most cows. And so to actually intentionally bring contaminated soils here next to this brook. So that's the main thing, is I just want everyone to know that this is a brook and there are pictures of it. This is very steep, and this hole is actually, a former quarry. So it's complete straight up rock face. And to me, I always said I never ever want to be at the toe of a slope again. So water is moving across this site into here. It does it right now. It's a junk pile right now, basically. There's all these things parked there, potentially leaking, that existed before for a while. There was less equipment there before than there is under the new ownership. But that's a risk anyway. But, so that's a big thing. And so my questions, I just definitely check it out if you consider that. So my questions are, if we're hearing that part of the scheme of this business is to basically broker hazardous waste, it's contaminated soils with oil was specifically identified from former oil tank leaks was identified. So logically, saying that there's going to be a tank there that catches possible contaminated water, well, definite contaminated water, will definitely be caught by a tank. When we know that tanks leak, and it's right next to a brook and the West River, does not make sense to me. And I think that's a big thing to consider. Second, if it's like a building I'm understanding is huge, bigger than possibly any other building in the rural residential district, but somebody could map those and see how 3,600 square feet fits compared to other large buildings in our rural residential neighborhood. I don't think there's much that big there. But rain, we know, blows sideways. So that's another way that, like, even if it's got a roof over it, I actually have people who have to come to my barn and fix it because it just flooded in the storm we had because the sides were open while we're working on it. So water can move across it and then go through it and percolate out organic compounds, which is a big deal. So that is important to me, and thank you for letting me share that. The smell, that's significant. Like bringing in, you know what it smells like when you have a tiny little oil spill in your garage. You want to get rid of it as fast as possible. So that doesn't seem like it fits. And just the idea of stockpiling, intentionally transporting waste, because every time you move something, something is lost. It's never perfect. So there's going to be spilling on the way in, on the way out. Every 10 days, it's going to have to shuffle. And the moving it on site into the building, out of the building. Every time you move dirt, things happen, it moves, and, so I
Well, it's
don't.
not clear, excuse me, it's not clear that it's gonna be a permitted activity under our zoning regs anyway, okay?
Oh, yes, I know. I just want to make sure that's also on the record as a concern. And the last thing is that we all have access to this. It's the permittable conditional uses. And as Brian said, the closest one on this list is mining, extracting, quarrying, and stone cutting. And it's been established that that is moving material that was naturally on site historically, cutting it out of the ground and moving it other places. This is bringing in things created by people. Thank you.
There was somebody,
Caitlin
online,
was online. She's one of the farmers.
I think you can take the picture down and.
Oh, sure.
Caitlin and Jesse.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, thanks. I'm not Caitlin, I'm Jesse, but bad at renaming things on Zoom. I guess I share a little bit of what Lisa just said, but so I'm one of the abutters to the south, and those fields, the vegetable fields that you see on the maps, our vegetable land. Most of our vegetable fields at Wild Carrot Farm abut that line, and mostly close up towards the houses that are proposed. And I'm I feel like we shouldn't speak to the housing piece yet, but in terms of the industrial usage, I guess I would just like to sort of frame. I see, looking at this map and sort of coming to this, looking at it from the downriver side, from the north side. It's a stretch of road that doesn't have a lot going on it, although it's a spectacular, beautiful place because of the West River and the way that it's been developed. From the south side, from our vantage point up on the hill, this land is used, from my perspective, vibrantly. There's a lot of people out there who use this land for recreational purposes. Its value comes from its aesthetics and its sort of natural beauty. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of people who use this land on a weekly basis for recreational. Our land is open to the public and is used all the time by folks for finding some open, quiet space in the town. And I just want to sort of reiterate that, like, the idea of turning that space into a place that is remediating contaminated soils is, these things need to happen. And, you know, I'm not an engineer. I won't speak to the sort of suitability of that. But what we are doing there is valuable because it is growing food that is healthy and is not contaminated with chemicals and petroleum products. We're feeding a lot of people on this farm. We have 700-800 customers that are shopping for vegetables here on a regular basis. And the idea of, and then we have a lot of people using this land to walk and to take sleigh rides and to and appreciating it for its natural beauty. The idea of parking a industrial site like that at the within a couple 100 feet of our vegetable fields feels like it's just not a great use of space.
You understand that it is not a permitted use.
I do. I do.
Right.
But,
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and that makes sense to me. And I guess I'm just sort of seconding that perspective.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to speak to the, I guess,
come up to the
You have to come
microphone.
up and identify yourselves.
I was gonna say, just to second what Jesse and Lisa have
No,
said
you
about
have to
that
come
site.
up and identify yourself, please.
Yeah, sorry. I'm Janet Bailey. I'm one of the 4 farmers on the Upper Demiston piece there that Jesse was just talking about. And I just wanted to back up. Sounds like we're just talking about the industrial site right now. Just to say, I totally agree with both of them. That's inappropriate for that area. It endangers what we're already doing.
Can I ask a question
Sure.
about the site? Brian, can you tell me what's happening there right now? From your perspective, is it conditional use?
So it had
Now?
been used as a quarry, and it had been used by David Manning before that to store materials and some equipment. And basically it was no longer an active quarry, but the use was similar to the impacts of a quarry use. So just
So the previous usage you would consider sort of grandfathered in by default or not really an issue?
I didn't really consider it much of a change of use because it seemed to be long established.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
It
can
would
can I
mostly-
ask who owns the property now?
MWF Industries?
Mining, extracting, coin, conditional
So if they
use
take off that
for
part,
residential.
So that's what we need to ask Brian, if we remove the.
well, I think maybe we
remove the-
should put it out there now though, like for everyone to
Yes.
hear, so that it's not just us.
Well, just to summarize and clarify a little bit,
I don't want to be blindsided.
okay, the industrial portion of it is the equipment and everything that would be there in the building would be the same company that would go to a contaminated site, remove the soil, like you're saying, bring it there, get it off the site, and bring it there in this, a real building with a concrete floor and walls, all 4 walls. It would hold it there until it can bring it to a licensed facility to dispose of it. That's what the company is planning to do there. As far as the abutting properties, we meet all the state rules for setbacks for the water supply and wastewater systems. We're 150 feet downgrade of any house. We're 1,500 feet to the nearest house. It's in a perfect location for the use we're proposing. And it is basically the same, or it's very close to what the use was for, it was materials there and equipment there.
Brian,
We're not gonna be treating anything, we're not gonna be spewing oil onto the ground. And it's gotta come from a site in their trucks, right to there, and then go from there to a disposal site.
Brian, from your perspective, is it the presence of contaminated soils from off-site that puts this into the heavy industry category?
You testified quite clearly that it was going to be
I'm sorry.
processed. You both testified very clearly that it was going to be processed on site and aerated.
Yeah, that was me, I was wrong. I was talking to the
I
owner.
think I said the same thing, which I wasn't aware of.
Yeah, I thought, that was the impression I had. I was talking to the owner, because they do that at some of the sites themselves for treatment, but I talked to the owner and he said, no, there's no treatment. It's stored until they can get it to a facility
When did you talk to the owner?
during the meeting here.
So I have a couple questions about how much activity do you expect? How many trucks? And with the comings and goings, can you talk about that?
Not a
The
question about the owner, but
volume.
one would think if the soil stays there for up to 10 days that
So you
basically it's going.
can only manage 1 truckload at a time, or 2 truckloads? Or tell us about the comings and goings.
Yeah, with the size of the building, you might get 4 truckloads in there.
Okay. So it's 4 trucks coming once every 10 days, back and forth?
That would be, if they had that much business, yes.
Do you have a capacity as far as the storage area and like yardage?
Yes, but I don't know what it is.
Okay, just I mean, that would,
So if you do come back, they're the kind of details we're gonna need.
Yeah.
Okay.
Certainly.
Well, I was excited about the housing
I was
part of it.
Yes.
The residential though, we're kind of on the right path with the residential and where Phil has the septic and the wells. I mean, there were not in any places where there was, we expected water to fall off or anything. We've really worked with the contour lines and with the actual walking up there. So if we do the 4 and if we can stick to 9 bedrooms, then we're probably on the right path for that. Okay. Excellent. That's good. So we know that part.
Well, okay, so I went back and I looked at the materials that we had online.
Yeah.
And there was something about the flood, special flood hazard area. And that some of these units would be in that special flood hazard area and they had to be high enough.
Elevated above the BFE?
Yes.
Yeah, the last permit we had was like that, but that was over on Western Avenue.
On Dara?
Okay, maybe
This
I
one is
pulled the
nowhere
wrong
near.
thing.
Does it say
Okay.
Dara at the top?
I did pull the wrong thing, I'm sorry. Okay.
So that's good. At least
So-
we understand where we are with the residential part of it.
Well, there's not a lot of detail there.
Well-
Need a lot more.
Yeah. Sketch review.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, because you were talking about taking away the closest to the abutting farmland.
Right.
So that's kind of a positive.
Oh,
But
Steve.
This is all sort of like, this is not voting that we're doing.
Right.
Yep.
So, yeah, Maya, if I could just, for clarification, if the commercial part is set aside, if we make believe that that's not being proposed and just focus on the residential part for now, that alone as a proposal would no longer be a conditional use or anything of that nature. And if there's not a subdivision being proposed at that point, then I don't believe that there would actually be anything that might even concern the DRB.
Okay.
I think it would become a permitted use minor plan review.
Thanks.
The key here, as my understanding is that the commercial, in terms of the applicant, that the commercial component is the key to this. The residential is secondary and may or may not occur without the commercial industrial. I don't know that for a fact, but that's the sense that I get.
Yeah.
If we just,
I
Brian.
mostly just meant to speak to the fact that any sort of concerns about the residential use would not really be germane because it's by right.
Thank you.
Can you explain that?
It's, it would be developable by right, that amount of residential.
The DRB wouldn't even have to look at it because it's a permitted use.
Yeah, it's not something.
Just the
that can be-
residential though.
the residential
This is
portion.
the
of it.
I know, and we're very concerned about the residential part, we'd like to talk about it.
And
so
the
that's why
soils
I'm asking
underneath
you.
them, which hasn't been addressed at all.
I think what we're saying is that would not be necessarily, as far as we know, part of our purview as this board is concerned.
If it were, if solely
If
the
it-
residential and there were no subdivision happening. If you decided to subdivide, then that would have to come to us.
Minor subdivisions don't have to come.
Is that a?
Yeah, that
Yes,
regulation
is that a
changed.
minor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right, that's the new rule.
So the board has to, or can make determinations or recommendations. And I would suggest that you don't make a determination as to the use to allow these folks to come and argue exactly what they're doing on the site. But I would suggest that you recommend that the company owners come to testify about what they're actually doing. That they bring an environmental engineer to testify as to what they're doing. That they bring copies of the state permits, or if those haven't been issued, the applications for the state permits for any air pollution control or any permits required for the industrial waters. And I think that's about it.
We can't do a waiver, though.
No, you can't.
No, at this point, you're just giving them recommendations to come back with a stronger plan.
But if we can't,
Well, I think there's an argument or a point where, what the actual use is and what they're doing there.
That's the way I think that's how I see it. Is that your take on that too, Brian?
Well, I mean, the board could make a finding that it's industrial, and that's
Or
that.
light industrial, that's a potential.
Yeah.
We would have to present our case and they could decide that, well, this would be classified as a light industrial
Use,
use.
well, then no industrial use is permitted.
right.
So they could come back with the company owners, environmental engineer, and offer testimony that this isn't actually industrial processing, and therefore it should be considered as a type of storage. And if they can't make that argument, then I think the board clearly would say it's an industrial use and not permitted.
Very clear.
Yeah, but we would need to see submissions for the environmental
Yes.
issues.
So that's the next
And
step
you-
for the owners.
And have an environmental engineer come.
Good. Okay.
No, I think that's,
Very clear.
Okay?
Yeah. Excellent.
that's what we were looking for.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
I can't see that. Lisa Holderness. So a question regarding the residential part and clarification that would help me understand it is about, I think what I'm hearing is that it's not going to be divided, so it would remain in the ownership of one person, and it would be maybe 4 units plus up to 4 ADUs, which would actually be 8, because I hear that you want them separate, so that would be 8 little buildings of some size that isn't mentioned on here at all, but maybe it looks like 40 by something?
This is a sketch plan
Yes.
review.
Yes,
So we do
sorry.
not have any details
Yes.
on what the housing would look like or anything.
So
we-
as a neighbor, can I ask for a detail if they come back with a residential plan?
The Development Review Board,
Yes, so can I
If-
ask your
if-
development
if-
review board to think about a specific thing that I'd like to
we
say?
will not be looking at this because the housing is a permitted use. If it's only housing that's happening,
Yes, my
Then-
question was about the driveway. It was just to understand something about driveways.
that, I'm not sure they know because they haven't talked about reducing the
No, it
number
was
of units
for
until
the
now.
process relating to driveways and housing developments. If you do not want me to speak, I will stop.
It's,
Yep, I hear
housing
you.
is a permitted use.
Yes, I have
Okay.
a question about driveways. I'm just gonna ask it. When I try to read our zoning rules, there, at one point, I think I understood, but this may be wrong, that up to 3 houses could go on a thing, and at that point, it's called a driveway, but if you added more than 3, it might be a road, and I could be completely mistaken. I am curious about how there could possibly be 8 buildings on a thing that's called a driveway and we don't say anything about it. Or at the point it becomes a road, then do we as a town have a say? I just don't understand that part.
If it becomes a road with 4 housing, right?
It's not a,
Yeah.
But it's not really relevant to this discussion.
Thank you for letting me ask anyway.
Do you want to ask it anyway?
Yeah, actually, it's interesting that Lisa asked that, because that was one of the questions that I wanted to ask as well. Assuming that the residential component would come forward to the board that, as part of a larger project, I had as I read the regs, the difference between, the way I read it was up to 3 units can be served by a drive. And Lisa, with all respect, will probably only have 4 buildings, okay? Some may or may not have attached apartments, but the key limitation is 9 bedrooms, however that can best be distributed, okay? And I doubt if, so 4 would make sense. More than that, 8 would not make sense up there for a number of reasons.
And it was never on the plan.
But the point you raised, in terms of using the existing access up into the property, the maintenance road, we would have a difficult time meeting the pavement width requirement for a rural road with the roadbed that's there. It would necessitate more clearing and disturbance, which we did not plan on doing. And we were planning on asking for a waiver for that reason, and that's why it's germane to what information that we're looking for tonight too. So
There's something that road's in here. Where is it?
And there's also anything about the slope of the driveway.
and the slope as well. 'Cause
I think
right
that's
now
separate.
it's over the 12% that would be allowed.
Right, for 100 feet.
Right, and it would end up being immensely destructive to provide access up there in any other manner other than that, than the current maintenance road.
So what do you think about 3 3-bedroom houses up there?
Well, it's something that
That equals 9.
that will be considered, yes. I mean, these are the kinds of things that we do need to weigh. That's why as much information as we can gather in.
Brian, what was that, project we looked at where they were adding another property? And I don't know, maybe Dan remembers.
Edwards Heights.
And they were, they had to name the road.
Oh, yeah, that was recent.
We had to do that
The name that was
because the third house was put on
That's
on it,
for,
so it was no longer.
So
Fairwinds Farm.
the threshold for a road name is different than the threshold for the municipal classification. So as far as the state E911 board is concerned, which is outside of zoning, but I am also the E911 coordinator for the town.
That's why I asked.
It's the third principal structure that needs an address, necessitates that road get a new name. So you can have a driveway as far as town zoning is concerned that needs to have a private street name as far as the state's E911 is concerned. But I do recall this coming up once fairly recently and finding that our threshold was 1 more than the state's E911 threshold, which was a bit of a surprise at that time, but I'm nearly certain it's 4, but we'll certainly find the citation.
In any case, the paved width, I think, would be 9 feet.
Oh,
Oh, well, yeah, right now it's probably 16
Yeah.
that we can accommodate. And 2 cars can easily pass on 16 feet, and there would only be a few units up there anyway, but the question was whether or not it would be classified as a drive or a road, and whether or not a waiver, we might have to request a waiver, because we'd prefer to come in prepared to request a waiver than at last minute be told, well, it doesn't meet the,
It would be a driveway.
it would be driveway. Okay, that's very helpful.
You'd have to look at a driveway over 300 feet. I think you need a
Right.
designated turnaround.
Yes, and that can be provided, that's not a problem.
I think you show that on your current
Yeah.
one.
On one side, I think.
Yeah, the hammerhead.
Okay, that's quite helpful.
okay.
It sounds like it's being tied to this
Well,
not
this
permitted
is,
use.
it was rather complicated,
Is
and
what's really.
the notion of a sketch plan review is
Such a good thing.
Extremely helpful.
Yeah.
And we got a wonderful, feedback from the Planning Services Department that allowed us to say, yes, this is how we need to
Yeah.
proceed, and this is helpful as well.
It's great when a lot of money is involved, you don't want to go.
You don't want to go too far, yeah, so,
Steve's memorandum was really helpful.
yeah.
Very useful. Okay. Can we leave?
Yes.
I think that's all we came for, so appreciate it.
So if you want to come back, if it's just housing, you can just deal with Brian. If you
Yeah.
want to talk about the industrial use or what were the,
Unanimous.
I would expect we will, Maya, for the.
well, then you'll need
more
to
into-
come
into the-
come back and talk to us.
Yeah. Okay.
Or you'll have to, other people, not us. Great.
All right, does anybody have any additional business? Board member?
I don't.
No.
Allison? No. Yes? No.
I'm all set, thank you.
Dan? No. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
And it is 8:20. And, all in favor of adjourning? Aye.
Right.
Bye.
All right.
See you guys.
How'd it go?
Oh, went very well.
Yeah, surgery's good.